so many times we miss out on these incredible encounters because we say, no, I'll stop here because here's comfortable. It's a little bit riskier to step into that 20%. It gets a little vulnerable. You're putting your reputation on the line. What will people think of you? Then the Lord took it one step further. And he began to talk to me and show me why Moses began to say no. He said, Christa, look at what he's saying no about. I said, okay. So I began to scan it. And I said, he doesn't know what people think of him. He's worried what he will sound like. He doesn't think people will believe him. He doesn't think he's qualified. And he doesn't think he talks well. So basically, it's man-pleasing. Fear of man, man-pleasing. And God says, what's that all rooted in? I said, that's rooted in pride. He says, I was giving him the opportunity to uproot pride in his life. He says, Christa, go ahead and skip a little forward. So I went to Numbers 20. So we're starting at the beginning of his call in Exodus 3. Okay? And we just kind of went through when he was initially called. Now we're skipping forward to Numbers 20. There's a lot that happened in between. It's really good. You should read it. But we're just hitting A and Z tonight. And at the end, the children of Israel are complaining, and they're saying, we have no water. We have nothing to drink. Our animals. Why in the world did you bring us out of Egypt? This is ridiculous. I can't believe we're here in this cycle again. And Moses and Aaron go to the tabernacle and they fall on their faces and the glory of God appears to them. And the Lord says, okay, go Moses, take the rod, speak to the rock, and water will come. So Moses takes the rod and says, you rebels, do you not think that God won't provide for you? He says, here you go. And he takes this rod, which represents the authority of God, and he hits it twice. Here's what the Lord began to speak to me about. That same pride that took him out in the beginning, what's anger rooted in? Pride. That same pride that God invited Moses to address at the beginning of his call, which ultimately caused him to walk at plan B for his entire life because he never dealt with it and he didn't allow God to uproot in his life, is ultimately what took him out of the promised land. It was the same cycle. It was the same root. That same pride in Exodus 3 reared its head in Numbers 20. So what caused him and robbed him from being the spokesperson and walking in the fullness of what God had called him to do, ultimately robbed him from taking the promised land because he said, again, not on my terms. You see, he relied on a way God had used him before because he struck the rock before, but this time God said, speak. Could we not go as far to say that God again was addressing that fear of man and what he would sound like? He said, speak to it. And again, Moses said, no, not on my terms. I'll hit it. Pride. And God's saying to the bride right now, I want to uproot some old cycles because if you don't deal with them now, they're going to take you out in the end.